Hey everyone, this is Dana J. We're hosting a live event today on Beat the GMAT. I'm glad you could make it to our to our session today. Before we start, I'd like to share a few things about myself. I am a non-native English speaker, such as yourself. Just decided to take the GMAT, and I personally struggled, as you did, with the verbal part of the exam. I joined Beat the GMAT on January 1st, 2009, right after the New Year's Eve party, and started posting, especially in the quant forum, because I was stronger in quant than in verbal, and I felt like I generally tried to avoid verbal practice, but well, you gotta do what you gotta do to study for the GMAT and just take the bull by the horns. And it's just out of my struggle with verbal. Actually, I've learned a couple of very valuable lessons, which I'm gonna try to share with you today, which I think might benefit not only non-native speakers but also native speakers who have trouble with reading comprehension. As a side note, reading comprehension is actually the only question type you will see in every major test. SAT, LSAT, MCAT, everything has a reading comprehension portion. Just because reading dense material is extremely important in all graduate or undergraduate studies. Now, moving back to why I'm here. So I applied these reading comprehension skills to take my GMAT on May 13th, 2009. It was the 13th, but it was actually pretty lucky for me. I got a 770 on the GMAT with a 50 quant and 47 verbal, which is pretty good. 47 is 99 percentile. And I kept on posting ever since then. It's been a wonderful journey with the people at Beat the GMAT. And right now I'm in San Francisco visiting for a few days. And we've decided to just put this thing together and see what you guys think. I hope it's going to be useful for some of you. And yeah, we can't wait to see if you like it or not. So today we have Eric helping me out with this live event. I would please ask you to post all your questions in the little box you have on the right hand side of the screen, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but at the end. Okay, moving on to what we have on today's agenda. We're going to do a detailed analysis of a Science RC passage, which is one of the most difficult types of RC. You can actually check out the passage. It's posted on the web page. It's posted just below our video stream. You should probably read that before we start. Well, should have probably read that before we started. So, after which we'll have three questions that we're going to analyze in depth and see how you can select the correct answer, or maybe in certain cases even just eliminate some of the wrong answers, which help you make a better, increase your chances of getting it right if you have to guess randomly during the test. And last but not least, we'll have a Q&A session. You guys can post all your questions, as I mentioned before, and we'll try to answer as many as possible. So right before we start, I just wanted to mention the fact that this passage, and actually this whole event, is powered by the Beat the GMAT practice questions. The passage is from the Beat the GMAT practice questions, which you can check out at practice.beatthegmat.com. Okay then, moving on to our first order of business, the RC passage. This is the first paragraph of the passage. Its role is always, no matter what the topic is, no matter if it's science, if it's social studies, if it's business, the role of the first passage is always to give you a general idea of the topic of the paragraph being analyzed, of the passage being analyzed. So, if you just read through the first 2 or 3 sentences, you realize that this passage is about biology, And just reading further down, you realize it's about marine biology, namely a group of animals called the mollusks. You really do not need to have specific information about mollusks. You're not expected to be a biology major when taking the GMAT. Everything you need to know is going to be in this text. So, the reading comprehension passages are extremely difficult because they contain science reading comprehension passages are extremely difficult because they contain words that you're probably unfamiliar with. What you need to do is just ignore the scientific terms. Just find a certain group of words or a term that can be your hero or your lead actor in this paragraph, in this passage. What the lead actor will do for you is you'll be able to follow his steps throughout the passage. You can just see each phrase as a new information in the story of the actor. Okay, in this case, in our first paragraph, the word mollusks appears 5 times, which is why I've selected this word to be my actor. You can see the words are actually highlighted. So this is one important step in analyzing reading comprehension passages. Just finding your lead actor, the word that is most important in following the text. What you also need to do is track structure of the text using connectors. Now, connectors is actually, I'm not even sure if this is a scientific term or not. I always use it because connectors are words that help you structure the text. These are usually, like connecting words such as therefore, moreover, stuff like that. I would say that in the grand scheme of reading comprehension, your lead actor is driving along a highway, and the connectors are actually his lampposts. So his road signs. He can turn or he can go left, go right, do all that according to the connectors. They're very important to following the structure of the passage because they usually introduce new ideas. In this first paragraph, we have because, we have therefore, and we have yet. Just to give you an example of how important connectors are and what their role is, let's just analyze yet. Before this word, which was just highlighted here, I hope you guys can see, we have information about how the mollusks, as a group of animals, are extremely beneficial to the reef because they help construct the reef. After yet, we have information about the mollusks as destructive force in the reef. So it's 2 contrasting information that yet helps bring together. So if our lead actor is constructing stuff right before yet, at the road sign which says yet, he turns and destroys stuff. So it's really useful to just follow the train of thought of the author, especially in reading comprehension passages that deal with scientific subjects. Okay, now moving on to our second paragraph. The second paragraph is, as you've probably noticed, much shorter than the first paragraph. This second paragraph is the purpose of the second paragraph is to take us from the more general category of mollusks to the more specific category of bivalves. As you can see, mollusks are a general set, and bivalves are a subset of mollusks. You can see bivalves is featured 3 times in this text. This is also important. You can track it. It's like mollusks became bivalves. It's just we're moving from the more general to the more specific. As always, it's very important to track connectors. In this case, because which introduces us to a reason for something. It doesn't even really matter what that is right now. It's just important as a general strategy that you know these connectors do this or that. When you say moreover, an additional information is going to be presented. If you say, However, a contrasting statement is going to be introduced, and so forth. These are extremely important words. Okay, moving on to our third paragraph. What I've highlighted here is the transition between paragraphs. It's really important that you keep track of this transition. In general, reading comprehension passages in the GMAT don't just talk about shoes in one paragraph and talk about dresses in another paragraph. It's going to be a smooth sailing through the same subject, which is why transition is very important. It's just connecting one part to the other, connecting related parts of the text. So, it is this method of feeding that the clams in the family Tridacnydae display their remarkable adaptation to the environment. That's the first sentence of the third paragraph. Notice how we make the connection between filter feeding in the second paragraph and feeding in the third paragraph. This is just, as I've said, tracking structure is extremely important in basically just creating a roadmap of the paragraph. Now, this third paragraph is particularly difficult, I believe, especially, I don't know, maybe for you. I personally found it very difficult when I read it the first time. Because of the wording, it's always going to be probably the same with most RC science passages. Because they are so densely written with the scientific terms, it's going to be hard for you to follow everything that is said. For instance, in this passage, I've highlighted a few words. All these structures that you see in red all denote the same thing. It's a type of clam. It's just a clam. If you can remember that, it's very important. The test takers will try to make you, just try to confuse you with wording. But as long as you have something to grab onto, like the lead, hero, or actor, mollusks, it's just a type of mollusk. Everything here. Clams of the family Tridacnydae, these clams, these remarkable mollusks, they're all mollusks. It's the same thing. Okay. Now, this third paragraph is important because we have another zooming in. So if the first paragraph is about mollusks, the second paragraph is about bivalves, and now we're zooming in even further to the family Tridacnydae, which is a scientific term in Latin. It's something you do not want to remember. So you should make a good habit of replacing words while you read in your notes. If you see something confusing, like a very long science term, just replace it with something else. I said here, family Tridacnydae, I say try. It's much easier to write down your notes and focus on them if you try to simplify words. Now, just on a separate note, it's just note taking is very important in read comprehension, and most people do that constantly. But I advise you very, very seriously, be careful about how many notes you take. If you take too many, you're gonna get confused. You don't know which is which. It's a strictly timed test. You need to remember that you don't have enough time to just rewrite the whole thing. So, try to take short notes, not more than 1 or 2 sentences per paragraph. This is very important. Okay, coming back to our paragraph, the third paragraph plays the role of presenting the distinguishing features of this class of animals. You'll see here the animals are very unusual, very fascinating because of their method of feeding, right? Their method of feeding, that they farm these small creatures called zooxanthellae, or however you pronounce that. As I've said, it's not important. You could just say zoo as like a sort of a contracted version of the word, which, of course, is a very remarkable feature. Now, coming to our very first question, what you should know when dealing with reading comprehension, this is a bit of like a theoretical background for you, but in dealing with reading comprehension passages, there are two general types of questions that you will encounter. The first type is a detail question. Detailed questions are specific to the very paragraph. So they'll ask you something. What color was Mary's bucket when she went to grab some water, or something like that. It's the detail. You need to go check out the passage and just see, look in the paragraph that actually explains to you what Mary's bucket was, what its color was. Okay. Now, those are detailed questions. They ask you stuff that you need to go in the paragraph and search for. The second type of questions are general questions. These test your overall understanding of the whole paragraph or passage. These general questions, we'll discuss them a bit later. Right now we have a detailed question, which is question number 1. You guys have it on the page, right below the text. If you scroll down, you can find the first question. Now, according to this passage, the ability of the clams of the family Tri to harbor microscopic zoo in their mantles is an illustration of, and you have all these answer choices. Now, what you do in detailed questions, some detailed questions will specifically refer you to lines 21 through 31 or something like that. Some of them will just mention stuff and you need to find them on your own. Now, coming back to the first category, if you are giving a set of lines, then you should just read probably the first sentence before those lines and also the sentence that is after those lines, because usually the answer is contained within that region of the text. This, however, is part of the second category of detailed questions, in which you're not told where to look for stuff. So what do you do then? You may notice that some words, you just pop out, like the very difficult science-related words. These words you should probably recognize from the passage. And when you see family Tridacnidae or Zooxanthellae, you should immediately think, I read about this in the third paragraph. So that's where you need to go in the text. So what do we do now? We go to the third paragraph. If you do not know the answer right off the bat, just quickly skim through the passage. Don't waste too much time, though. Just quickly skim through the passage to find the key words and read 2 or 3 sentences around them, and that's it. That's your answer. It should take more than that. Remember, it's a time test. You need to save as much time as possible. Okay. We read through this passage. I just brought up the question for you to see as well. So we read through this passage and we notice this one phrase here that I've highlighted for you. This must surely be one of the most fascinating examples of symbiosis to be found in nature. So, the correct answer for this question is answer choice A, which is symbiosis. So, according to this passage, the ability of the clams of the family Tridacnidae to harbor microscopic Zooxanthellae in their mantles is an illustration of symbiosis, and we have the proof right here. On test day, what you do is select the correct answer and move on. You don't waste time. Try to, as I've said, you try to save as much time as possible. However, right now, because we do have quite a bit of time, we're going to analyze each other wrong answer choice. And word of advice when you choose your books, actually on a side note, try to get books that also explain why a wrong choice is wrong. It's very important, because if by mistake you selected the wrong choice, then you can go to the explanations and find and simply backtrack to see where your error of reasoning was. It's very important to do that. Okay, now our second answer choice is an inability to adapt to one's environment. What do we do then we go to the third paragraph, of course, where the family is mentioned, the family Tridactylidae and the Zooxanthellae, and we just briefly skim through. You may notice that in the very first sentence of this paragraph, we read displayed their remarkable adaptation to their environment. Now, this statement right here directly contradicts answer choice B. So this is why answer choice B is obviously incorrect. Moving on to our third option, bivalve function. As you may recall from my drawings about mollusks, bivalves, and the family Tridactylidae, bivalves are mentioned in the second paragraph. So we go to the second paragraph, right? And we just briefly skim through it if we need to. However, there is no mention of the Zooxanthellae or the family Tridactylidae, which is very specific terms. Indeed, the family Tridactylidae is part of the bivalves, but that doesn't mean we don't see the Zooxanthellae. We don't have an explanation for that. This is why, of course, answer choice C is incorrect. Okay, answer choice D, oxygen replenishment. If you've read the text carefully, you may have noticed that oxygen is mentioned in the second paragraph, as you see highlighted on the screen. Again, though, we have no mentioning of the Zooxanthellae or the family Tridactylidae, so answer choice D is, again, wrong. Our final choice is evolution. So we actually found another reference to evolution when analyzing answer choice B. This was in the third paragraph. Evolution is featured here. But be careful though, this is a very tricky question. It's in the same paragraph. It's not directly contradicting the paragraph. However, it relates to something a bit more subtle. If you read this phrase, in the course of their evolution, the various members have become structurally modified to best enable them to develop in their particular habitat. So, in this case, evolution refers to structural modifications, and there is no mentioning of the Zooxanthellae. This is why this answer choice might seem appealing, but it's not correct, according to the passage. Okay. So, correct answer for question number 1 is symbiosis. Moving on to question number 2. Bivalve mollusks possess neither differentiated heads nor radula for which of the following reasons? Again, as I've mentioned in the beginning, every question can be categorized as either a detailed question or a general question. As you may have noticed, this is a detailed question. We're asked about something specific to the text, and what do? We search for words, for keywords that could help us find the answer in the text. In this case, it's the radula, right? This word helps us narrow down our search to a certain paragraph. The radula was actually mentioned in the second paragraph, right? So what do? We quickly go to our second paragraph right here, the shortest paragraph, and we find that by reading through it, we find our answer. Because most bivalves are filter-feeding animals, sieving minute organisms from the surrounding seawater, they have no differentiated head region and no radula. Okay. So, the correct answer choice here is answer choice C. They strain plankton through their gills. Strain is similar in meaning to sieving, okay, which eliminates the need for a differentiated head and radula. Of course, we select this answer choice and move on. But on test day, we would that, but right now we won't do that. As a side note, though, I just want to remind people of a common mistake in reading comprehension. What people do is, what GMAT test takers do actually, is write answer choices that have virtually lifted certain phrases from the passage in order to draw your attention. You're like, I've read this before. I think this is the correct answer choice. But no, usually the correct answer choice is a rephrasing of what we had in the text. Like right here, I'm taking you back to the text, because most bivalves are filter feeding animals, sieving minute organisms. This is actually your phrase. They strain plankton through their gills. So the correct answer choice contains a rephrasing of the text. This is why building up vocabulary for reading comprehension is pretty important. You don't need to know scientific words, but you will need to know general vocabulary, English. It's very important because of the rephrasing in the answer choice. Always be extremely suspicious when you see an answer choice that simply looks too much like the text. It's usually incorrect. Not 100% of the time, but usually. I would say 90% of the time it's incorrect. Which is actually a pretty good option if you're trying to eliminate answer choices in case you're out of time or you need to guess. So always eliminate the answer choice that seems too much like the text. Okay, let's analyze each answer choice and see why it is wrong. As I've mentioned, this is very important. This is an important exercise that you must do when you practice, because it helps you backtrack and find where your error was. So, answer choice A. Better locomotion on the ocean floor is accomplished without the need for a differentiated head or radula. What's wrong with this answer choice, you might ask? Well, locomotion is actually not discussed at the passage at all. So you can safely cross out this first answer choice. Answer choice B. Visual apparatus is located in the antennae, which obviates the need for a differentiated head or radula. Again, antennae or visual issues are not discussed in the paragraph. So this is, of course, we can cross off this answer choice from our list. Moving on to answer choice D. They trap their prey by closing their hinged shell, which performs all the functions of a differentiated head and radula. This is an interesting answer choice, but it's not correct. We know that the paragraph is about feeding. But in the second paragraph, we can read, because most bivalves are filter feeding animals, right? So they are filter feeding. They're not trapping their prey with their shells. They're sieving, as you can see here, sieving minute organisms from the surrounding seawater. So we can also cross out answer choice D. Finally, answer choice E. These apiary would interfere with their symbiotic relationships with other organisms. Again, apiary is not mentioned in the text. This is not a common word. I actually have no idea what it means. It's probably appendix or something like that. I don't even need to know because it's a very scientific term. I will be very honest. It's unimportant to the task of answering all the questions of this text. So answer choice E is also incorrect. So again, recapping, answer choice C is the correct answer choice in question number 2. Okay, question number 3. An appropriate title for this passage would be. Now, this is actually a general question, right? So we've moved on from the detailed question to the general question. On test day, you might have a detailed question first, a general question next, or something that is, the order doesn't matter. It's not absolutely necessary that you have the detailed question first and then the general question. These general questions they'll appear in multiple instances, multiple forms. It's usually a main point. So most of the time, you will receive a question about main point. This tests the very general and broad understanding of the passage. You could also see questions about the tone of the author. You need to identify the tone using words from the passage. In this case, usually science passages are pretty objective. So science passages describe a phenomena or a category of objects, or I don't know, like stars or planets or animals. So the description will be pretty objective. You will be asked for tone mainly in more subjective passages such as social sciences, or like African American studies or women's studies or Native American or the revolution or anything along the lines of that moves away from science. The topic of the of a passage is largely the same as the main point. It's just like the general thing that we're talking about. Of course, there are other general questions. This is an appropriate title for this passage would be this. This is not such a common question, but it's pretty important because it captures the main point in the topic. They're in the same category. What you have to do when you see such a question is just eliminate each answer choice as they come. Okay. As I've said, general questions test your understanding of the passages. Now, moving on to answer choice A, filter feeding in bivalve mollusks. Let's see. We've discussed bivalve mollusks in the second paragraph, right? But this is a pretty short paragraph. It's compared to the first paragraph and the third paragraph, it's not really consistent. Like it's not a big chunk of the text. So bivalves are mentioned indeed, and filter feeding is mentioned, but the option is simply too narrow. So this is too little real estate in terms of the in terms of the text, right? So we can safely cross out this option. Filter feeding in bivalve mollusks is discussed only in the second paragraph. It doesn't present a broader view on the three paragraphs as a whole. Okay, moving on. B, plankton and coral reef ecology. Plankton is mentioned in the first paragraph. It's right there. You can see I highlighted for you. It is indeed, mentioned in this paragraph, but again, the option is simply too narrow because plankton is only mentioned in the first paragraph. In the third paragraph, it's we're talking about more specific stuff like the interesting symbiosis between the family Tridactylidae and the Zooxanthellae. So while plankton is important for the mollusks, it's not really that important for this text. So we can safely cross out option B. Prey and predator in the tropical seas. I initially I thought tropical seas was not mentioned in the text, to be honest. But as it seems, it is indeed mentioned. It's towards the end of the passage. It's right there, right at the end of the third paragraph. It's simply, again, too narrow to justify a title. So the whole ecology of the clams bound exclusively to warm, shallow waters of tropical seas. This is the conclusion of the text. This phrase is only mentioned in the conclusion of the text. It is not relevant to the entirety of the text. So this is why option C is also incorrect. Option D, role of mollusks in the reef ecosystem. Now this is indeed the correct answer because it combined, we can see references to this in the first, second, and third passages, right? Okay, let's just see what these references are. So for our first paragraph, general ecology of reefs is in the very, very first line, right? Then the mollusks are also mentioned a lot in the first paragraph. In our second paragraph, we see filter feeding animals, right? And minute organisms. These are all creatures that are part of the ecosystem. So it's a reference to the ecosystem. In the third paragraph, at the very end, this is very important as the conclusion, as I've mentioned. The ecology of the clams, right? This is reference to the reef ecosystem. Ecology, ecosystem, it's mainly the same thing. We select answer choice D, and we would normally move on. But we will also analyze answer choice E. Mollusks and something in the coral reef. I can't pronounce that. It's just it's a very scientific term, which is not even mentioned in the text. So this is why we can safely cross out answer choice E. As I've said, if it's something that looks extremely scary and you've never ever heard of stuff like that, it's probably not important. You can easily answer the questions on your own. So we're at the end of our session right now, but right before I answer some of your questions, if you have any, I would just like to make like a very short, a brief, few important points that you should take from this session. First and foremost, if you see difficult science RC passages, you should always try to find a certain term, a certain structure to be your main actor or your hero in this story, right? In the story of the RC passage. Second, you should follow your lead actor using connectors. These connectors help structure the passage and your thoughts, and it'll be much easier to answer questions. Third, avoid taking lengthy notes. Replace words that you do not recognize with shorter versions. Just make up your own very own abbreviation just to use for a few minutes. You won't need it afterwards. It just has to be there for a few seconds. So short notes and replace words that are very, very unfamiliar to you, scientific terms in particular. Okay. Fourth, there are two types of questions in reading comprehension. The detailed questions that you just have to deal with. You need to find the correct answer choice by looking at the at a certain paragraph or at a certain structure. And the second type is general questions, which will ask you about the overall general topic, point, tone of the passage. And I think that's going to be it. Do we have any questions?
We do, Donna. Ask to be sure to repeat. We have the first question is...
Okay.
How much time should we ideally spend on the initial reading in these kinds of passages?
Okay, so in reading comprehension, you should know that... Excuse me? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm not sure you guys heard the question, but the question is, how much time should we spend on reading comprehension? Is that correct? Initially spend...
In the initial reading.
Okay, in the initial reading. It's very important to treat reading comprehension passages as a whole. So you will see the reading comprehension passage and you'll get 3 or 4 questions. It's not important to get 1 minute and 45 seconds for each question. Always you will spend more time on the first question. In general, reading comprehension passages should take around 5, 6, top 7 minutes. For your first reading, a lot around 3 or 4 minutes, even more if it's a really, really long passage, but 3 or 4 minutes is usually enough for a first reading. I see people sometimes recommend that you just skim through the passage the very first time. I say that's not such a good strategy because you have to keep coming back to the text. You should focus all your attention on your first reading of the passage, and all the subsequent questions will be much easier to answer. So I hope that answered it. It's 3 or 4 minutes, tops 5, for your first reading. And then you just skim through. Okay.
Next question. On the first reading, if I have no clue what I've just read, should I keep reading or move on to the questions and come back?
Okay, so our second question is, on the first reading, if I have no clue about what I've just read, should I move on or read again? Is that correct? Okay. I honestly think that you should probably try to read again. But this is something you don't want to do too often because it takes a lot of time. I would advise you to just go over the text again, taking notes, like very, very short, brief notes of the main points. Each paragraph has a main point. And this is probably a lot more important than just moving to the questions, because you won't know where to look for the answer unless you have at least a general understanding of the passage. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, so last question by Nasir Khan, which is, how would you relate the connectors with overall comprehension of the passage?
So our third question is, how would I relate
The connectors with overall comprehension of the passage?
The connectors to the overall comprehension of the passage.
Maybe talking more about like what do connectors really mean?
Okay. So more about what connectors really mean. So first of all, I consider them to be extremely important in the grand scheme of things. Simply because they structure the passage. They connect the ideas. That's why I call them connectors. Following the connectors and understanding their roles and what each of them means is very important to understanding how the passage is structured. So I bring up an idea, then the second idea is actually contrasting. How do I connect these two ideas? How in such a way that it makes sense, you know? I need to put something in between them that just, you know, puts them together, fuses them in a way that makes sense. I can't talk about, I don't know, I can't talk about TV in one paragraph and then move disjointly to healthcare or something like that. No, there has to be a connection. So TV is really important today because this and this. One of the most important topics on TV is healthcare today. We see it discussed a lot. However, you know, and all that stuff is really important to understanding the passage. I actually use this technique of tracking connectors. I've been using it for, oh my God, I think 5 years since I first took my my Cambridge English exam, which also had a reading comprehension part. Every test has a reading comprehension section. So, and it's also like a good, as a side note, it's a good idea to use connectors in your writing when you write the analytical essays. You see, you have to use first and foremost, second, however, because you know that the analytical essays is scored by a human rater and a computer rater. The computer rater will always grade you higher if you use connecting words. So the computer rater is programmed to identify those and give you a higher mark because of that. It helps structure your thought. Okay, I hope that somehow answers it. Okay, so I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for attending. It's been a real pleasure. I hope you got something out of this presentation. We're definitely going to post the video on Beat the GMAT. We'll let you know about it on Facebook, and I think we'll also post a small feedback form on Facebook. If you could be so kind as to fill that out for us, we'd be very, very grateful. We want to stream other events in the future as well, and we just want to know what would be a better format for you, what you'd like to see discussed, and all that, or everything that's about this this session. So again, thank you everyone for attending, and if you have any specific questions, feel free to send me a private message on the forum. So, okay, have a good day. Bye.